I think we've come to expect a bit of mayhem and surprise from our trips to Baku, but this weekend's rather muted Grand Prix made the chaotic, teeth-clenching races feel like a Bajan era. A Bajan era. Because, never mind. Despite the race never truly coming alive in the ways we'd hoped, it doesn't mean we weren't without plenty to discuss. An early virtual safety car split the Red Bull Ferrari strategy. What could this have looked like? We'll never truly know because Leclerc retired. In fact, it was a double retirement for Ferrari, so is that game over for championship hopes? We'll also look at some nonsense that happened in qualifying and some potential rule changes afoot to smoothen things out. And of course, we'll once again look at the bouncy porpoising problem that left a few drivers more than a bit sore. But let's start by looking at some race strategy, because it seems we were all cruelly robbed of at least an attempt of an intriguing head-to-head between Leclerc and the Red Bulls running on different strategies. Carlos Sainz broke down with what seemed like a brake-by-wire failure on lap 9, triggering a virtual safety car across laps 9 and 10. Quite a few teams use this as an opportunity to take a cheap pit stop. Stopping under the virtual safety car costs about 11 to 12 seconds compared to stopping under normal race conditions, which costs around 20 seconds. So you can save a lot of time by reacting to a safety car and coming into the pits outside of your scheduled plan. There was a risk in this though. For those starting on mediums, Pirelli calculated the fastest strategy was to go all the way to lap 18 to 23 before switching to hards for the rest of the race. A slower alternative strategy was to stop early, around laps 10 to 15, but this was a two-stop plan with a cheeky switch to softs at the end of the race. The Red Bulls didn't come into the pits under the virtual safety car, something Perez called an error of communication as he believed they should have stopped. But perhaps Red Bull played it right, sticking to the one stop and playing to the intended tyre life. So from this virtual safety car period, the race could have played out in a couple of ways, had Leclerc been able to go the distance. Let's assume Red Bull stick to their first pit stop window with Perez coming in on lap 16 and Verstappen on lap 18 with Max leading the Bulls. At this point, Leclerc was about 13 seconds ahead of Verstappen. He could have then tried to go to the end, extending the hard tyres beyond their planned strategy, or pushed them a bit harder and done a second stop for softs or mediums at the end. It seems most likely he would have at least attempted that one stop, having gained track position by pitting under the virtual safety car. Would this have been possible? Well, probably yes. The hards were not only very fast and consistent, but their degradation was extremely low around Baku. Gasly stopped at the same time as Leclerc and took his set of hards the 42-lap stretch to the end of the race at a fairly consistent pace without any noticeable drop-off. Now, in theory, Leclerc could have managed his hards to the end without compromising much on pace. But would he have kept that lead? Well, that involves a little bit of guesswork and extrapolation, but if we look at the laps he did do against the Red Bulls, we can probably guess. The three at the front were well matched before the VSC. When the race resumed, with Leclerc on new hards and the Bulls on used mediums, it was clear the fresh hards were faster. And I mean, the hard tyre was very much the rubber to be on this whole race. It was just better all round. So through the first laps of this stint, he'd not only saved a bunch of time with a safety car pit stop, but he was reeling in the Red Bulls quickly, about a second a lap. But once the Bulls stopped, it was clear they were even faster still on the hard tyres than Leclerc was. We see they all get one or two great laps immediately on fresh rubber and then settle into a pace. And if we extrapolate a little, we see Verstappen was running the hards probably about half a second faster than Leclerc was able to. And at this point, Leclerc had retired, so Verstappen wasn't even fighting anyone. He probably could have got even faster if Leclerc was still ahead of him on track. So in reality, Verstappen probably would have passed Leclerc. His pace was incredible, and the DRS was very powerful. No one really matched Verstappen on race day. Red Bull knew this, hence their no fighting message to Perez. Now, I don't read this as particularly nefarious, suppressive team orders, rather a let's not cause problems for ourselves while it's clear Max has that pace. And so it bore out, with Checo actually having no answer for the lap times Verstappen was able to put in. And for all the talk before this race of Perez really being in the championship fight, he does now need to find something extra to match his teammate if he wants to stick his nose in. Red Bull did also have to be wary of losing too much time to Leclerc at this point, who was in the net lead. Yes, Red Bull were faster and were running a more optimum strategy as we just discussed, but around these tricky streets, there is always a good chance of a second safety car down the line that would have handed Leclerc a 3-second pit stop and put him back in a potential winning position. So it pays to be paranoid in F1. So what do we make of Ferrari then? A double retirement with different failures on the factory team and 2 further failures from customers in the cars of Magnussen and Zhou. Well, Ferrari did rebuild and redesign their powertrain for 2022, and it is working really well in terms of pace. But turning out a brand new engine brings with it the possibility of gremlins in areas that you really will only discover from running the thing. And I mean, it has happened a bit with Red Bull too, even without a full redesign, but Ferrari need to get on top of this and fast. I guess you could say now things have evened up between the two teams in terms of bad luck and reliability. And with the dust cleared, Red Bull are 80 points clear in the constructors' standings and have a 1-2 in the drivers with Max 34 points ahead of Charles. A full reverse swing. We are now a third of the way through the season, so yes, plenty could happen between now and the end, but it really has felt like Red Bull has had the stronger package and probably the stronger driver this year. And all the big gains Ferrari made capitalising on Red Bull's early issues have now washed out. But both teams will be busy at the factory looking for gains, so it's not over yet. They will of course be stymied by the budget cap, so the days of bringing big upgrades regularly throughout the season are now gone. But clever, tactical improvements could swing things back to Ferrari. And I hope so, because I do prefer a long fight across the season than a walkover. I think we've had enough of that recently. Meanwhile, on the Saturday, we had a couple of interesting goings-on. The more noticeable incident was Alonso supposedly holding up an entire train of cars in the mad rush at the end of Q1 before outbraking himself down an escape route and causing yellow flags, ruining multiple drivers' attempts at a final quick lap. Did he do it on purpose? I think there may have easily been some gamesmanship with backing people up behind him, but losing control later in the lap may have been accidental. But Albon, the most immediate casualty from Alonso's silly buggery, brought back the idea of deleting lap times from anyone who causes a yellow or red flag in qualifying, as it's far too easy for people already through to the next round to game the system and lock down their result by forcing competitors to slow down for flags. And I agree, we probably do need to prevent against people gaming this. There have been a few dodgy, suspicious incidents on track that have raised a few eyebrows and ruined other people's laps over the years. My only concern with deleting lap times is maybe penalising people who genuinely just made an error and forcing them to suffer doubly for it. But to be honest, maybe that's the risk you have to take from pushing. Push too hard and maybe you'll lose your banked lap by wrecking the session for other people. It's worth thinking about and exists already in IndyCar. Lesser noticed in qualifying perhaps was the stewards looking into the Haas cars inserting themselves into the pit lane queue for the qualifying restart. So what happened was, when the red flag came out towards the end of Q1, all the cars came back into the pits, of course. Then, anticipating the restart, all the cars queued from the pit lane exit down the fast lane. Haas, with its garage positions down the far end, was already blocked by the queue of cars, so basically inserted themselves as best they could into the train when the session restarted. Now, Article 34.8 of the sporting regs states that cars must leave the pit lane in the order they joined the queue. But the problem with Haas and other teams at the far end is they can't really join the queue in order, as the queue was already formed right across their garage. So it was kind of impossible for them to work out at which point they joined the queue and where they should insert themselves. So the only way to legally join would have been to wait for the whole queue to pass and join last, which is a huge disadvantage just born out of the fact that their garage position is last. So the stewards decided not to penalise Haas, as they had tried their best to join fairly but were hamstrung by circumstance. The stewards also recommended examining the rule, as it will continue to cause problems like this. So there we are, another little quirk of the rulebook showing itself. And finally, let's talk about the issue that left Lewis Hamilton with a well done Baku. The heavy porpoising combined with long fast sections and bumpy street surface meant that the cars were troubled by porpoising and feeling it hard. And Lewis Hamilton seemed the worst affected by it. And there are some potential real issues that can start arising from all of this beyond just the drivers experiencing some pain in their neck, their back, and other places. If Anchor Elena put together a useful thread on some of the long-term damage that can come out of spinal damage, even from light injury, it's worth having a look at that and reading to understand some of the consequences, but even the pain itself could cause problems. It's all well and good telling the drivers to suck it up, but if the race is causing them so much pain that they are slow in extracting themselves from the car, as Hamilton was, that could cause issues in cases of fire or other dangerous situations after an incident. So something probably needs to be done, and drivers are closing in on consensus on this, proposing mandating something like a minimum ride height or changes to the suspension for the future. Russell in particular thought it was strange that with such technology available, they couldn't allow for tech that could make this better, like some form of active suspension. Now, there are two positions on this. Those being either it should be up to the teams to take the initiative and stop the problem, or it should be on the FIA to force a solution upon the teams to stop it. The first camp points out that some teams, like Red Bull, have made a car that works well without obliterating their drivers' spines. So really, it's up to the other teams to figure that out for themselves, and in the meantime, they could just lift the ride height up if they really are concerned about their drivers. And you can understand that to an extent. Toto seemed very upset, complaining before the race about how hard the car was on Lewis in particular, and how he was unsure if Hamilton would be able to get all the way to the end. And you could easily say, well, if you are that worried about him, just raise the car higher and ease the pain. You will lose lap time, but you'll reduce the injury on your human driver. And Hamilton, he is one of the older drivers, about the same age as me, and he'll feel the strain on his body harder and earlier while taking longer to recover than drivers still in their early 20s. That's just bodies. If you're still young, I say this to you as a 38-year-old, enjoy your bodies. They start feeling their age earlier than you think. Now, Christian Horner says that the Mercedes drivers are being told to ham it up to force a technical change, and he says that's absolutely what he would do. But to be honest, I think that tells us more about Christian Horner than Mercedes. But you would be right if you say this is a choice that teams like Mercedes actively make. They're chasing performance at the expense of driver comfort, at the expense of risking hurt and injury. Now, Lando Norris suggested that McLaren have actually sacrificed some ride height to provide a balance between performance and porpoising, though dialing out the porpoising may have all been part of chasing performance than comfort anyway. The truth is, teams will push the envelope in the direction of performance every time. And almost every time, the FIA will step in to stop them if they feel things are going beyond the bounds of safety, expense, and so on. The FIA has a mandate to save teams from themselves. So I do kind of expect some kind of technical directive or regulation change to come in at some point. Maybe for next year, maybe mid-season. Is this fair on the teams that got it right? Maybe not. But that hasn't stopped the FIA before, who have indirectly penalised teams who've absolutely nailed something only to have it banned or modified. So we'll see what happens. Canada is coming up and everyone is expecting more of the same. And though Lewis says he'll be fit and racing and has had acupuncture, which doesn't work and is a load of woo nonsense, go to a proper physio, dear viewer, I beg you. Mercedes are making sure they have a reserve driver on standby, just in case. Maybe this is an exaggeration and egging it on to a small extent, but I definitely don't want to see anyone permanently hurt by any of this. This isn't the NFL. And while F1 teams struggle to create both tightly packaged form-fitting design and user comfort, today's sponsor Bellroy have no such issues, and you can get 10% off their site with the link in my description. Bellroy are in the business of efficient, modern design for their collection of carryables. They know our habits are changing as we move around with all manner of portable tech hanging onto us. So they have a whole range of pocket accessories, bags, and work kit that is functional, innovative, and streamlined. So they're not taking up bulky space, not weighing you down, and are quick and smooth to use so you're not fiddling and faffing about awkwardly. Like this Apex Slim Sleeve. It's lovely and thin, well crafted, magnetically snaps closed, but pops open with a one-handed pinch. Holds my cards and notes. It's just also easy. So if you're on a commute, out to lunch, or even travelling on an adventure, like I will be this week when I head to Montreal, you know you and your kit are sorted, from your phone to your keys, to your money, to your everything. And their supply chain and manufacture is sustainably and ethically managed. So head on over to Bellroy with my special link in the description and get 10% off whatever you fancy. Treat yourself.